very ad hoc live stream here.
Can you see? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So we are live. I'm pulling my hair back, getting the hair out of my eyes.
Camera's right there.
Oh, and the camera's right here. It's going to be a running gag on our show.
Yes, I get you every time.
I need to put a photo behind the camera of an imaginary audience. An
Yes,
audience of
yeah.
penguins, preferably, because if I thought I was talking to an audience of penguins, man, I would perform. I wouldn't want to disappoint penguins.
Hi, everyone. You want to introduce the session?
Yeah, but thank you for the tea. So this is Two Floridian, and we had a podcast that was different planned for this morning, but it's a change of schedule. Hopefully a worthwhile one. I think you might enjoy some questions that I have for Alexandra. She is my wife. However, I'm going to speak with her about her projects as if I'm interviewing somebody for your benefit so that you can learn a little bit about alexandranee.com, about her shift from fashion design to a more yogic approach, teaching yoga and studying a lot of various things having to do with breathing techniques and even harmonics. And we're going to talk with her about that and about her journey and what took her from to Florida, what brought her here, and what influences she's had since she's been here.
All right.
Does that sound good?
Sure. That's why I'm in this chair.
And then she may also ask some interview-like questions. And I say interview-like because I'm not pretending that we don't know each other. We're married. We know each other quite well. But we do have questions about our projects. We don't get a chance to talk about everything in detail. So we'll see what more we can learn about each other's projects. At the same time, we want to share them with you. So that's why I say it'll be like an interview format, but I don't want to pretend that we don't know each other because that would be disingenuous. We've been married a little while now, right?
Yeah, close to 10 years.
Yeah, so we should know a thing or two. We should win a game of the newlywed couple.
Right, hopefully.
So maybe start by telling people why you came to Jacksonville when we met and what your initial thoughts and your impressions were of Jacksonville and of Florida before you came.
Well, I came to Florida, to the States, about 10 years ago. It's actually going to be, in a couple of days, it's going to be exactly 10 years. And the very first time I had ever been in the States was actually that time when I came 10 years and I landed in Jacksonville. And the reason I came was escape Berlin winter. So at the time I lived in Berlin. This is where we met. And it was, the winter before was horrifyingly long, cold, gray, just very, very miserable. So when Bill suggested to come to Florida for 3 months of winter, it was a pretty attractive.
So your initial impression
proposal.
was place that doesn't snow.
Yes. Well, yeah. Yeah. And then we decided to stay, and here I am 10 years later, still in the escaping Berlin winter.
And what did you think of Jacksonville? Had you ever heard of it before, or?
No, well, no. I mean, I had to Google. I even remember Googling, like, what's Jacksonville, Florida, looking at the pictures.
And so what was your initial impression? What did you think?
Well, I mean, by then I had never been to the States, so I had zero preconceived idea about let's say, not a large, in terms of density, population density city like New York. So you normally, as a foreigner, what you see is America. They normally show LA or New York City, maybe Chicago in some, but it's basically, or it's Miami and its particular parts, right? So you have like a very filtered, super filtered perception or image of. So that was my only, I guess, understanding of how.
So you related it to that. You knew it wasn't like Miami, but you related. You're like, I guess it's a little bit like that, but smaller and not as dense.
Honestly, I didn't have any. The only pictures that I was able to pull up on Google at the time were of Jacksonville downtown, the skyline and the bridges. And I don't know, it looked to me pretty dry, pretty like common with the high risers. And yeah, so I had no expectations, to be honest. I just wanted to be away from the But
You'd have gone halfway to Hades just to avoid the next winter, huh?
well, I don't know about that. Yeah, and Jacksonville, even 10 years ago, was very different from Jacksonville now. And of course, I'm not just talking about city in general, but in particular about the neighborhood where we live in Riverside and adjacent neighborhoods like San Marcos, Springfield, Murray Hill. It's a beautiful evolution of the place. And of course, I think it took me about 2 years to sort of acclimate to Jacksonville because it wasn't just a new country. It was a whole other way of it's a whole new culture that I was never exposed to and mentality. And as a cultural anthropologist, I found it very interesting. But it took me about 2 years to, excuse me, to understand Jacksonville, to understand how Jacksonville works, how people here interact, and what they mean when they say certain things, and in general, the American way maybe of interacting, especially again if you're not talking about like super busy, highly populated places where
Can you
it's a
give
little
us
bit.
an example, maybe in a story of something of how you learned this, how this experience kind of came to you?
Well, I have to say that there's always a lot of one of the maybe let me rewind. One of the maybe most interesting, and it depends on the person whether it's a positive or not experience, but I think like American people in general, and it doesn't matter what race you are, as long as you were raised, not even born, but raised in America, American people are very easy to interact with. And I felt like, especially in the South, like in Florida, it was very, and I was not used to that. Before I lived in former Soviet countries like Kazakhstan and Russia, and then I lived in Switzerland and Berlin. I'm in Germany, so it's a very different. People don't just. It was very unusual to me that I can be, let's say, in buying food, grocery shopping, and then someone would just like, "Hey, I like your coat," or "Oh, it's a cute haircut," or "Where did you get these earrings?" Like just random people compliment, and it's always a very positive interaction. Well, most of the time, so unless maybe you get shouted at in the parking lot. Never happened to me, but but it's general. In general, it's a very positive interaction with just completely random people, and I found this very appealing. I think it's a very nice, relaxed, open, very humane way of just small little connections that don't entail anything, they don't oblige you with anything, and it just bring a bit of positivity. And I think that, like, if I look at myself 10 years ago, that I very happily sort of borrowed in my toolkit of interacting with people, that because I think it's yeah, it's very nice, it's very positive. I like that. So speaking of a story, in addition to that, being easily interacting with random people, it's very common also to express your excitement, right? And I think it's often portrayed in some American sitcoms how exciting people can be about something, and it's very vocal and it's very emotional, and that was a little bit again that's something I had to get used to. The same excitement goes to, let's say, we're hanging out, we just met, or we haven't seen each other in like whatever a year, and it's like, oh Bill, what's up, da, 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 da. And it's like, we gotta hang out, you gotta come to my podcast, or I don't know, we have to meet again and like have coffee, and yeah, 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 let's do that, and it just never happens, or like we even commit, and then again it just never happens. So I guess that was like the main thing that I had, like, aha, not every let's do that means actually let's do that. It could be just, I don't know, a polite way of closing an interaction, or a true excitement, but then people get busy, like we all do, and it takes a bit of an effort on each side to make actually a thing happen. So that's
I've
just an
I've
example.
heard in Japan it's even more so. I've never been there, but I've heard that in
I heard a
Japan,
lot of funny stories.
yeah, that everyone says yes, they'll come to anything, and if they don't give you a date, they're never coming. They are
Oh,
not ever coming. It is not going to happen. If there's not a date and a time.
I heard maybe it was on another podcast, one of our favorite podcasts, No Such Thing as a Fish. Maybe not, maybe I heard it before, but they were saying that there's this Westerner. I don't know if it was he was American or European, but he worked in Tokyo or maybe in one of the larger Japan cities in some corporate environment for a year, at least a year. And then he always thought he had great relationship with his coworkers because they were always nice and polite. And only when he or she left, I think it was a male, I do not recall how, but he realized that one of the coworkers that he particularly thought that he or she was very nice and kind and liked him a lot actually couldn't stand him. But like by culture, she or he was like his coworker was obliged to, to be a certain way. And this guy, he lived like all his like Japanese experience in the lie.
I think that's
Totally,
hilarious.
it is funny. I mean, it is sad at the same time, but it is funny to realize that, you know.
I think it's a beneficial thing. I mean, I like the diversity, so I'm not suggesting one culture should behave differently, but I think there's an awesome personal benefit that you could get if somebody aggravates you to be extra nice to them.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, how I say normally, like that, there is no negative response to kindness, like if someone is kind to you, there's something, you're unarmed. What do you need? The only response you can have is with kindness or nothing, which is, yeah, so yeah, I guess. But also a little bit unauthentic. And I'm all for authenticity. All right, that's the.
I was all for authenticity. The younger I was, the older I get, the more I'm authentic, but I'm all right with turning the volume down a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's also being authentic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um,
Would you like
so
more tea?
no, I'm pretty wired now
Okay.
after some matcha and some tea. We should be sponsored by matcha and tea. Um, yeah, so when you came and you kind of, let's say you, well, as you mentioned, so you kind of adapted to this more, a little bit more gregarious and a little bit more, let's say, outspoken environment. What else would you say, occurred over the 10-year period? Do you still find this beneficial? Is this still the main highlight? Are there other things that temper this that you want to discuss? I'm curious about
Well,
your changing and evolving experience with Jacksonville and with Florida,
well, okay.
which I don't
How?
know about, so it's a good thing to interview you about. I've never asked you about this. So.
Yeah. Well, how about if I approach it from the angle of being an immigrant? And I think
Hmm.
it could be maybe a more interesting also angle to talk about. So before I moved to the States, as I mentioned, I was an immigrant in Switzerland and then in Germany. And again, on the positive side, speaking about immigration to America, and maybe because I'm in the South, it was an, a more embraced experience. But I have to say, the experience of being an immigrant from day one in America was like ways and ways more positive and pleasant than being an immigrant in the other countries I lived in. And I haven't lived in like so many countries to, bring it to the, but
Well,
it's just, I think it's
and not
because,
to interrupt, but I just want to quickly add, and it's not that it was easy. It wasn't an easy
no,
experience.
I'm
You
not
had
talking
to,
about, yeah, you
you
still have,
worked and you went through a process
it's the
and
same
yeah.
everywhere. Yeah, the immigration process is never easy in any country. But that's a different subject.
Hmm.
I'm saying just being an immigrant that is trying to be integrated or just trying to live in a completely new environment with the way you look, with the way you dress, with the way you talk, everything, right? It was you don't feel so separate. And I guess it's logical, right? Because America is like a land of immigrants, right? And I guess that's so engraved in the so encoded in the culture that it just comes without saying. I know that there are negative immigrant experiences. I know there's a certain opinion, certain groups, how they feel about immigrants and especially illegal immigrants, right? But I'm not even like, I'm not going there, just on average. And it's not only in Florida. As I would travel through the states in the first years, I mean, I still sound like English is not my native language, right? And people can never point at really what exactly is this. But anyway, it was always pleasant. I didn't feel like I'm someone inferior because I wasn't born or because I'm not a citizen. And it was very pleasant. I think, yeah, it was very pleasant. And yeah, I think I forgot what was the question. How it
How
evolved?
your experience evolved. Yeah, I mean, from this initial, so you found an initial warm welcome, continued to be this openness within yourself, you said, where you acclimated and built this in to your character. And now from what you're adding, I think that after that years in, it's still this openness and inclusion of other societies and other groups that you find nice about living
Well,
here.
yeah, I have to say, I was born and raised in Kazakhstan, and at a time, and maybe still is. I mean, at the time it wasn't. Maybe still is. I didn't notice on the last visit so much. I was my mind was on something else, but it used to be a highly international country in terms of cultures. You know, we had like Ukrainians, Russians, Germans, Chinese, Mongol, Uyghur, Uzbek, Kyrgyz, Kazakh, Tatar, like a whole range of different ethnicities all living in one country. All cultures kind of like kids going to same schools, playing in the same playgrounds. So to me, that was a more natural way of like people of different cultures, different uh, appearances and traditions all living peacefully together. Uh, so the way it is in America, or at least the way I experienced being an immigrant in America, was a more familiar way to me. Even when I moved to Russia for about 8 years of my life, even though it's the same language that I spoke in my native Kazakhstan, I was culturally shocked, you know, to be like as a 15-year-old, it was a shock to me because even though it's the same language and sort of the same kind of like source, you know, post-Soviet environment and country, it was very shocking to me. It was very different.
Oh, hey,
Yeah, it
we have a little podcast guest.
yes, we have a
Hey,
very like
hey, little guest.
impromptu. There you go. So yeah, as I was saying, that was a more natural way of being and interacting with
Did you
humans
sign a
too.
model release? I'm not hitting on you. You're just so
And
cute.
how it changed my experience. You have something to say? I don't know. I just unexpectedly I found home, a sense of home in Jacksonville.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think my experience would have been different if it wasn't for the neighborhood where we live. You know, the historic neighborhood of Riverside and Avondale, and the people we met, and so and I'm happy I took that leap of faith coming with you after knowing you for just 6 months to stay for 3 months here.
That's great. I mean, I think that's a good also. I think that's great information about Florida to share. I'm glad you're sharing that because when I first met you, I was really excited about Jacksonville and Florida, and I was hard selling it, but it wasn't. I'd say it wasn't very easy.
Yes, I remember the thing about the river, the only river in the world, and the Nile, I think.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that what flows
Flows
north.
north.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is
Don't.
absolutely inaccurate.
Yeah. Not correct at all. The St. John's River and the Nile are not the only two rivers in the world that flow north. Approximately half the rivers in the world flow north because rivers flow in whatever direction is downhill.
Yeah, I'm not sure about half, but yeah, it's a big number and way larger rivers than St. John's or the Nile.
Yeah.
Or, or
Yeah. That's what I get for not referencing my information. Taking information from one source doesn't work out.
right. Yeah.
Um, so when you came, tell us a little bit about what you did. How did you find, you were studying fashion in Berlin and you came here with an intention of doing fashion. You started
Right.
doing couture fashion here in Jacksonville, Florida. Tell us about that experience. How did you find this process?
Well, fashion field is not easy, period. It's
Hmm.
one of the toughest industries.
It's like wanting to be a rock star, right? Like there's so many people gunning for it, right?
Well, it's different because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of labor, like actual labor, So, but fashion in Jacksonville is even harder.
Hmm.
So,
Because you have to have buyers, right? Am I correct
well,
with that? It's
yes,
a
you
big
have to
challenge.
have buyers. You have to have a fashion scene to be able to sell your fashion locally. And I think it is maybe somewhat getting there in the last few years. But then again, we got pandemic happening and like old fashion, I don't know what was going on with fashion. I think old fashion went to lounge wear and PJs.
Yeah,
So, to be
it's,
honest, I stepped out of that world a few years ago, kind of coincided
it's
with the
before the
pandemic.
pandemic, though, right?
Well, it was my exit year, yeah, I would say like 2017, where kind of mentally I was started closing, and then it took me another couple of years because of other obligations, being the regional director of Fashion Group International North Florida here, and yeah, so I still kind of carried it on for another 2 years, but then 19 was pivotal, and I completely reprofiled myself. But going back to fashion, it was interesting to. And on one hand, it was difficult, and on the other hand, it was easier because it is more tangible, so to say. It's kind of a little bit easier to get to people and make things happen here in terms of, let's say, events or right that uh, to build your brand or to build your reputation. So, and it was fun. I loved working with local photographers and organizing events. As you remember, I've been doing quite a lot of events around fashion. And then again, once I uh, joined the board and then eventually became the regional director of the Fashion Group International here in North Florida chapter, we were putting events pretty frequently, all about related to fashion industry, and let's say neighboring industries like skin care, beauty, interior design, and such and such. Yeah. So I'm glad I had this experience because it was a good avenue to embark on upon arrival, to meet people and to build connections. I think we still have a lot of valuable relationships, valuable not in terms of what can I get out of it, but valuable as a human interaction relationships
Hmm.
founded in those years of me being active
A
in
lot of our
fashion.
friends we met through
Yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't know why I'm using all these long words. Yeah, friends.
Yeah, we met our friends
Yeah.
there. We had just come here.
Relationships, valuable relationships. Yeah, friends, yes. um, yeah. I still do, as you know, I still create and still design. But a few years back, I read this book. It's called U Turn, and it's you as you, YOU, not you turn. So it's a play of words. And it's written by a female millennial, which technically I'm also, I think, but I'm like in the beginning.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I
I
think
don't
like
want to go quote
84,
you something
1984,
radically
I think it still
wrong, probably.
falls like within, but it's like the outer edge of the membrane. And and she was writing about how basically to make a right career choice. And she was a Pentagon analyst in the counterterrorism unit. She had a brilliant career there, but she eventually realized like this whole career was sucking the life out of her, and she had no friends, no love relationships, nothing. She just had work and kind of decrease in health.
Mm.
So yeah, she stopped everything. Anyway, she wrote this book, and then one of the most important. It's a very good, like almost like a manual guide, But one of the phrases or things she said in that book that resonated with me so much was that don't do what you love professionally, meaning professional. Do not do what you love, do what you are. And I feel like fashion is what I really love. I have so much appreciation and almost vital need for beauty in my life, whether it's, I don't know, plates, cups, cushions, the way earrings, fashion, whatever. It has to be beautiful, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
love beauty or human beauty.
I would say aesthetics. I would call you an aesthete.
Yeah. So it's still a very important part of my life, but I like how like mentally I put it in the box of what I really love.
Mm-hmm.
And I still enjoy creating. As you know, I design from scratch, like from your two-dimensional image of what you want to create to the full 3D manifestation, and from pattern making to sewing to alternating to whatever, everything entailed. I still very much enjoy the process, but it's not what I am. Which brings me to that 2019, where by kind of out of misery, I figure out what I am.
What kind of misery? What
Well,
was this misery?
2019 was pretty rough. Work-wise, we had a lot of stress and issues, and I just experienced that all in my body. And I think by like summer, I realized I cannot carry on this way. And I've been going, had been going to osteopaths, chiropractors, manual therapists, all kinds of things. But the relief, the actual physical relief, would be so short-lived that I just realized like I got to do something more sustainable and where I don't rely on other people. And that's what basically brought me into deeper dive to yoga, because I was already practicing yoga regularly.
Mm-hmm.
But that what ignited that interest. Like, I need to know more about anatomy and why we do certain things and how to do them properly. And basically, I just did an experiment in that summer 2019. I put together a little protocol for myself, a kind of blend of traditional mat-based yoga postures and aerial yoga postures that were beneficial for me, for what I needed, for my aching body. And it worked. And I said, like, I'm going to practice every day, no matter what, even if it's 30 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
and it helped. And I just saw the power of, with effort and discipline, the power of self-healing, that our bodies are capable of in general, unless of course there's like a serious like illness or injury involved, but even then. And that brought me into my training.
How long did it take before you went from, I'd say, being a student to deciding that you wanted to teach and beginning that training? And sorry, before you answer, let me just quickly gaze outside and make sure we don't have a guest waiting. I heard a car
Oh,
pull up,
sure, yeah.
and I'm just going to confirm that we don't have somebody waiting outside. Yep. Because I don't have my phone on me, of course. So, all right.
um
So yeah,
well,
when did you switch?
I signed up in August for the training in December,
Mm-hmm.
and it was an immersive like on site, so it's like it's an intensive training. And my only intention was to learn more in a more guided, structured, protocolized way than
How long had you been practicing at that point?
about like regular. So I've been practicing yoga on and off for I don't know how many years
Mm-hmm.
before that, but it regularly, dedicated practice, going to classes, having my teachers, understanding something deeper than just what people tell you to do. By then, 5 years.
Okay. So about 5 years of practice, you said you wanted to take another step. Something compelled you to go further.
Yeah, well, I was curious. Yeah, I was curious about being able to help myself in a more founded way. And I didn't want to just go to a retreat where I will be practicing yoga, eating good food and whatever, meditating, but I'm not going to be getting the knowledge. So that's why I
Was
chose
it
the teacher's training, because I thought like that will be a more strict way.
because you would always be able to help yourself then? You wouldn't need to rely on somebody else.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think I just have a curious mind also. And if so, it's something I'm truly interested, it's not it's not
I
an
know you,
effort.
you do study a lot. You are always
Yes.
studying something. Ever since I've known you, you've been studying things. So
So,
scholastically.
yeah, and then through the training, I realized I actually very much enjoy teaching. And then I realized I am a teacher. Like that's what I am. But I don't want to be an academic teacher because I had this idea way like when I was back at the university, thinking like I really enjoy teaching, when we did like internships and such, high school kids. But I was like, I don't want to, I don't want to like sit in the libraries for the rest of my life. You know? I don't want to be sitting. Yeah,
Cocoa Puff wants to sit in the library,
yeah,
don't you?
teaching yoga is provided that for me. And as you know, I'm expanding that beyond just yoga into other modalities that I've so much enjoy. Uh, yeah, basically that was the
Hmm.
base, the beginning of that path of my re recalibrating what I am or what I
Was
do
would you say that those classes, each of them provided some level of inspiration, causing you to study more?
through the training.
Yeah, that you found things that were beyond what you expected in the classes, or did you find exactly what you expected and you've been progressing on a plan? Or would you call this more of a trajectory that's somewhat guided by your experience as you go?
I think with anything you do, any type of education, it really depends what you put in. And I came to the training very well prepared because they give you like a ton of pre-assignments and homework before the training. And if people signed up 2 weeks before the training, of course they didn't have time to prep. I had at least 4 months to go through books I'm supposed to read, to go through certain tasks I'm supposed to do. So I came prepared, and I think it just enhanced my experience. I wouldn't say like I had some like mind blown really like revelations, maybe for like, apart from a couple of things. It was to me as an adult, as an adult female, it was the first time being in the environment like this, in a retreat, even though it was strictly, scheduled and everything was pretty much no free time. Maybe like at lunch, you can choose whether to eat or dive in the ocean. But it was just, yeah, it was very intense. But it was great. It was a wonderful experience. I just always think about that time with a lot of joy and um, gratitude. I think also for me, it was the first time I kind of allowed myself to do something like that, to sort of invest so much in terms of finances into, because those trainings, whether you go to the site or you do this like the more every other weekend, the more extended trainings, it's not cheap, it's not something like, oh yeah, I'll do the training. Unless you do, of course, online. I think now through COVID, there are all those online trainings for like, I don't know, $200, which is
Or do you think
ridiculous.
in any way that any way that that could possibly be comparable to an
Of
in person?
course not. No, no, not even close.
Yeah.
No. I mean, it's yeah, I don't want to go that route, but no, it's not. Because did some trainings and still I'm doing some trainings online, as you know, because the trend was established through the pandemic. And of course, there is a difference. But even the trainings I do now online, they're vastly different from those $200 online trainings for 200-hour yoga teachers,
Hmm.
certifications. So, yeah, so it's,
Yeah. Would you suggest somebody maybe who took those to maybe still go to certain classes to get the full experience? And can you recommend anybody in this case? Like say I'm somebody who took one of those online courses. Where could
oh,
I
the
go?
online
Where could
courses?
I go to get more of the experience? If that's what
Um,
how I already got certified, but maybe I want to gain some of the experience that
well,
you had in
so,
person.
okay, if you are already a certified, let's say 200-hour certified teacher, and you did an online training, for example, I would highly recommend to go to um, try to do the next, if you want to go to the next level, right, the 300-hour, do in person, whether it's in your local studio, or if you have time to take off and go somewhere like, I don't know, India, or in the US, they do those. In Mexico they do, or Costa Rica they do a lot of those intensive trainings. My teacher and the school through which I was initially certified, Marian Wells School of Yoga, she started doing this something pretty cool. So the 200 you can't break up, but she broke up the 300, and it's now in the increments of 100-hour trainings. So they're less intense in terms of time, and they're less expensive, and you still get that, that in-person experience. And I think it's so valuable, again, whether it's in the studio or as a retreat. There's nothing, it's because you work, it's not just anatomy, it's not just philosophy read in a book, right? It's not just whatever rules, 8 limbs, and it's you will be working with people. And if you are training not with people but through a camera, it's very hard. It's completely different. And I know there are teachers who do only online classes now, still from the pandemic. It's a very convenient way of giving classes, like minimal expense, right? And organization, and you get more or less the same benefits. But that human interaction, you can't replace that. That energy that is created by your energies combined in one time and space is irreplaceable. You can't replicate this through, right? So absolutely, I would recommend doing the whatever you can portion of your continuing education. And for online trainings, I feel like I'm advertising all my all my resources, which I'm not against. I hope it's okay with you.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, okay.
That's actually what I'm going for.
Yeah,
I think it's great to be able to recommend these people, and I like that we can do it in an unbiased way.
right,
Like nobody's
yeah.
telling us to do this, nobody's sponsoring us. We're just giving you good information to people who might be.
As you know, I'm currently training in 2 main modalities, completely different from yoga. And one of them is somatic education, which is, again, still working with the body, working with the person. It's still healing oriented. It's still self-healing, but it's a completely different modality.
Maybe describe it a little bit. I don't think too many people know.
Somatic education, and there again, somatic is a very trendy word right now. There is a lot of somatic movement, somatic experience, somatic dance. I don't know what else somatic, but everything somatic is now very popular. So this particular method, Hana Somatic education by Novato Institute in California, is a unique method created by Thomas Hanna. His name is in the method, and it's method of neuromuscular retraining of your system, your brain, therefore your nervous system, for a more optimized, a more efficient, a healthier way of moving, posture, etc.
Okay.
And it kind of the goal is not to, like, okay, it's my somatic education workout now, right? It's not a workout.
Yeah, how would I know if I needed this?
How would you know if you have any pain, any chronic pain, shoulders,
So this helps
back?
people with chronic pain.
Absolutely. Chronic pain, again, we have to,
What types of chronic pain?
if it's not structurally related, let's say if you have,
So if I have whiplash, that's structural, right? Well, no,
it
it's a
depends.
combination,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And even then, if there are fractures, this is something maybe not. It definitely will
So this helps
relieve
with the
pain.
muscle portion of
Yes.
whatever's causing it. Doesn't
Right.
solve the bone portion.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to solve the bone portion.
Yeah, that
On your
requires a
own.
separate. Yeah, no. That's a separate process. That's
Yes,
right.
but even
this
if
is
you
about-
have a bone portion, sorry for interrupting,
Yeah.
it still can help you, decrease the amount of pain you experience.
Okay.
Right? So it's a very good supplementary.
Right.
Let's say people who have some, I don't know,
A pain in the neck. A lot of people have a pain in the neck. It's become an
Yeah.
expression.
yes,
It's
yeah.
so common.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Pain in the neck, 100%. Any kind of injury, again, of soft tissues. Yes, any kind of
Tennis elbow,
habitual.
tennis elbow, where
Yeah,
people.
because it's repetitive movement, whether it's tennis elbow or the way you sit at your desk, right? Or the way you hold yourself, the way you walk. It's all repetitive movement. The patterns that are the muscular patterns, muscle memory, right? Engraved in certain patterns that your brain deemed good because you kept doing them. It's like, okay, I guess Bill really likes doing this. So let's incorporate it and automate it and move it from my cortical, right, engagement, for my conscious and voluntary engagement into my subconscious or unconscious, rather involuntary, that is just automated. Because as you know, your brain's main and maybe only objective is to keep you alive from this moment to the next. It doesn't think about how's Bill gonna feel if he does the same thing for 10 years in a row, right? Because it's like, okay, it looks like it's efficient and it's necessary now, so let's automate it so it's efficient, right? So I don't have to spend, so your neurons are not spending so much energy to do, to pick up the cup or move the mouse, right?
So it could even help me with my nerd neck, where I tend to do this
Yes.
from too much time nerding out on the computer.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely everything, wrist, but and just like asymmetries in your body, if you're right hand dominant, most likely a lot of things are going on in your right side, how to balance that, and I think it's just a wonderful in general, at least based on like on my own experience and the experience and the feedback I get from my clients. It's such a wonderful practice and method to bring you back into your body. The problem, in my opinion, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who think the same, that nowadays we just spend so much time, in our mind, and we treat, and we're kind of cultured and educated and raised to treat our bodies just like that machine that gets things done for my brain, for my mind, right? We don't consider themselves, and then we suffer, right? But as you notice, your physical condition affects your mental condition and vice versa. So you want to keep your body healthy until, like, preventively, rather than when it's like too late and you have to rely on other people to help you, right? And invest a lot of money. So I think it's a great experience when people just, and I have all range. Sorry, I'm kind of jumping. I'm so excited. I gotta have like different ranges of age in my clients. They all report like this wonderful like reconnection with the body. Maybe sometimes for the first time, the proprioception, sharpens. Where am I? Like where, like how do I move? What am I doing? Why am I bumping into the table all the time? Or why am I doing this all the time? They just start asking these questions, and I think that bringing your basically self home is a very pleasant, empowering, soothing, relaxing, nurturing experience for everybody, males, females, uh, as I said, different ranges, different activities professionally. So they just, yeah, and of course everybody walks out of those sessions, somatic education, so like very relaxed, very in the body, present.
How often do you recommend people try it when they start? I'm sure it's varied based on what their goals are,
You
but
mean
in
like
general.
sessions,
Hmm.
guided sessions? I would say like 6 is a number I would consider. Like if you had a,
6, do they do this weekly,
I would
several
do it
times a
weekly.
week?
I would do it weekly because that also
So it's like
your,
once a week for six
yeah,
weeks, and then they've got things you tell them to do in between,
exactly. So that's the beauty of
like a
this
physical
method.
therapy.
My goal as a somatic educator, somatic educator, is to give you, I should correct, somatic educator in the tradition of Thomas Hanna, is to give my clients the tools that they can incorporate in their daily routine for maintenance. And then they don't need me, or maybe they need me just every like other month, or when something goes way out of symmetry and they're like, I got it, I need help, but they can do their 5, 10, 15, 30 minute, however much time they have it in their morning or during the day or in the evening to do that routine. And I'm teaching those exercises, I'm
Hmm.
educating them, but it's on them. They come to me to learn, and hopefully they need me less and less and less, and they leave with that knowledge, because every session I give homework. We learn something. It's like, okay, there's your homework. And then when you come back, I'll ask, did you do your homework and how often and how did you feel? Not to put pressure on people, but
For sure, they have goals and you're helping them
right,
accomplish
yeah.
them.
Yeah. So speaking of trainings, that's like, so I highly recommend the Vero Institute for this. And most of my trainings were online. I did attend, they offer some hands-on again trainings, and it was wonderful, beautiful if you have an opportunity to combine both. But that's a beautiful group of people, super quality work and education that they offer. And one of my I don't know, outlets I used to train a lot also through online was the Yoga Body. I think the official name. So the Yoga Body is the brand, but the Yoga Teachers College, I think it's called. Yeah, but
Yoga Teachers College.
Yeah.
Very easy to remember.
Yeah. But they offer also, I think they do offer 200-hour vinyasa online. They offer aerial yoga certifications, breath work, and other things. And what for me was good about and distinguished this particular school from other online, that it's a very responsible group of people offering the service. Like, yeah, I felt like I didn't feel like, because it's online, it's kind of, I'm listening to some recordings, I don't have live interactions, and it was a very positive experience, even though it was online. It was one of the first ones I did in COVID.
I saw that you had a lot of direct interaction with the teachers. It seemed like it was constant, and
Yeah.
it seemed like you were conversing with them regularly. So I imagine that the classes were reasonable and sized where you felt you always had time to ask questions and things. Is that correct?
I don't remember, to be honest, about the Yoga Teachers College, you mean?
Yeah, I remember you speaking with the yoga teacher when you were the guy who.
Yeah. I think the classes are pretty large, but this is what I also like about him. He is responsible and he delivers quality and he manages this somehow, So he has
Yeah,
a
I
lot
heard you
of
speaking with
assistant
him several
staff.
times.
Yeah, because like every day you would have like so many hours of like direct interaction, like not just one-on-one, of course, but like you can ask questions. And often he would allow a few hours through the day to send questions and he would address them, let's say the next day during the live class.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. It's very well planned. Yeah, because I don't know how those 200-hour trainings go online now, but I'm sure there's a lot of like, listen to this recording and mark it done, like,
Yeah, like
or watch this video and
like
mark it done, right?
like when you need to get your driver's license back and they're like, you have to take this silly test. You remember I had to
Yeah.
do that when
No,
we
yeah. Hmm.
visited one time.
Yeah, so there you go.
Okay. Yeah. I have more time to talk with you in depth more about this subject. We have about 10, 12 more minutes. Or I can, if you have questions about anything from me, or you want to
It's so funny.
reverse the roles, or what would you like to do? We've got about 10 minutes or so left.
Um, I don't know.
Do you want to drink? You want
No, I'm good with my tea, but thank
to play
you.
beer pong?
Um, I don't know. We can keep talking about, since I'm on that path, or we can also, since it just happened that we also a couple, a married couple, or it doesn't matter whether you're married or not. Just maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah,
I don't know
about
if
doing
I
a.
don't think if it's interesting to anybody. I don't know if it's interesting, I should say.
I'm not sure. I'm never sure exactly what's interesting to people, which
Yeah.
is why I haven't tried to promote this podcast yet. But I think it is nice, the idea to maybe talk about, maybe we can segue from the yoga is something you do, but both of us work from home. Both of us are independent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but maybe you want to share your thoughts and some tips on that other people might be interested in to help them do something similar, to be able to work from home and to work from home along with a partner, and how you engage there's got to be some technique to it because it's very
Well,
rare. A lot of
yeah,
people have a
it
challenge
is
with it.
exactly. And I think that's why in COVID there were so many separations and divorces because people for the first time was like, woof, 24/7 lumped in the same space and time. And a lot of relationship didn't endure that. Um, I think what I figured out through the years of doing this.
How'd your relationship do during COVID? I'm curious.
I think that it's important to discuss and agree on certain boundaries. Let's say because we have you and I we have independent businesses and we have a business we lead together. So for me it was important to say no shared business discussion, no work things, let's say at dinner or at breakfast, you know. And if we're gonna talk about work during meals, then we have to like, is that okay? We have to agree that it's a business meeting, that it's now a business lunch meeting or business dinner. And that's
Otherwise, it's
important.
just work all the time, isn't it?
It's work all the time, and work seeps into your home space, into your private space. And this is where, because work is not always fun, right? So you bring that negativity or challenge into your private space, and that could be very bad for the relationship. So putting those boundaries, what role are we playing now, right? And really respect those boundaries respectably. And having private or your personal time and space. If you cannot have the space, if let's say if you're in smaller living conditions that you can't really like separate physically from another person, then it could be just, I don't know, silent hour or silent hours, or okay, we're in the same space, we're present in each other's space, but we're not interacting, for example, right? So you kind of have this again time to yourself, and again respect that.
In our case, just to cue in for some viewers, that's how this lounge kind of began. We were setting this up thinking that we would have a guest space, and then we realized our guests can stay with us. I needed to have.
Well, in COVID, we had no guests,
Yeah,
so
that's right. We had.
this studio was just sitting here. So
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah, we had a long period during COVID where we didn't have anybody visiting us. And then I took it over as an office, and it turned out to be a far more healthy environment, I think, for us because I'm able to come out here and to do my own thing here while Alexandra has an office inside the house where she's has her own quiet area there. And I think that it's the only way I know that I can really think is I've got to, first feel like I got all my fidgeting out of the way, I got all my stuff out of the way, I got all my interruptions out of the way, and now I can settle down and work.
Right. Yeah.
And that means both having the separation from the home, but also to be able to walk out, close the door, go in the house, and be done.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I think like for that particular question, that would be my two primary like recommendations.
I'm curious what you think of some of the ones I've told people in the past. I said, first, try to be bored. Make sure everything in your life is not distracting you, that you don't have other drama and other things going on. If there's other things going on, there's always something going on. I'm not saying there shouldn't be anything at all, but if your kid's getting involved with drugs, and you need to like talk to them and you're having this kind of drama, if your spouse is about to leave you and you're thinking, how do I save the relationship? These aren't times to start a business.
Oh, you're talking about starting a business? Or thought about a couple
I'm talking about a couple in a relationship and doing business together, which means, and if they're thinking about it, it means they don't already do it.
I mean, yeah.
Usually. I always tell people who want to do something similar to begin by trying to eliminate things that aren't needed out of your life, distractions by solving problems. If you've got looming issues and things that are ongoing, start addressing them quickly so you can create first the open space. And then when you have the open space, then you can formulate a plan with your partner, how those things will work, and then you can really build something in that vacuum. But nature abhors a vacuum, and if you can create that vacuum, you'll naturally fill it with the type of business ideas that you want. And if you coordinate that with your partner, then I think it's one of the best things that you could do, because, well, you get to double dip a lot. You get to have things related to work that you choose to incorporate. The good things that you want, you can bring into things from home. And some things from home that are good, you can bring into work. And you can draw that boundary in the areas that are problematic or challenging, and keep those challenges sandboxed in their appropriate arena.
Yeah, I agree.
But you can only start if the challenges are separate. You can't start if you hire your brother because he's living on your couch and you're hoping he'll move out. Like, that's probably not a good business plan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a whole like thing about working with your family and friends. I would not recommend that.
Yeah, I don't
Unless,
recommend it, but I say, yeah, unless you're willing to write it off.
well, unless you're coming together as equal partners. Yeah. But like hiring, I should say hiring your family members or friends, I would advise against that.
I think the amount of rules you can break depends on the amount of margins you have. If you don't really, if you're not too concerned about the outcome, if you're having a family garage sale and the other person's like, yeah, I want to have a garage sale too, and you both just want the
Well,
stuff
I'm
going.
not talking about garage sale business.
No, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's pretty clear what
But sometimes that those little things can become big businesses with big margins, and then I think it's really easy to work with family, to work with friends, to work with all kinds of people. But when push comes to shove, and when you have challenges that you can't resolve, and it impacts one person more than another, which is usually overwhelmingly the case, I think that's where it's a real problem. And I usually think it's best to do that in an arena that's not so critical. I think it's good to kind of earn your money in a way, to make sure you've got that in a secure way. And if you want to, let's say, break the rules and do things the way they're not supposed to be done, the way they're not taught in business school, then do it with something that doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, yeah. But then again, like if you have a living business and it is something you want to grow, sustain, and because the danger in involving your family or friends is not only that, it can go, it's a more delicate situation, and the role should be so clearly defined, and understanding should be so crystal clear on each side. But the danger is also that you can lose your relationship through some, I don't know, challenges in business or misunderstanding or something. And it's much easier to just, not easier, but it's different quality of loss. Losing a partner, business partner, versus losing a partner who is also a friend or family member. Right? So, yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
I
So
think
combining them is a risk. We did it though. We combined it successfly. Us.
yeah, but we're okay. I guess, yeah. Unless a family member is your spouse, then it's a different thing, which we will elaborate in our next podcast
Yeah.
episode. Yeah, well, thank you for having me and
Yeah.
asking all these questions. As you notice, I can talk a
And,
lot.
and now you know a
about what I
little
do.
bit about my partner and the other Floridian of two Floridian. Now you know a bit about her. You probably have seen me maybe on my gaming channel or somewhere, but now you know a little bit about why Alexandra Need does yoga, why she shifted from fashion, and why she came to Jacksonville. So join us next week, next Wednesday. Do you remember who we got next week?
Yes, next Wednesday is kind of nice continuation of this podcast episode. It's gonna be founder and owner
Alejandra?
Alejandra, yes,
Nice.
of Viva Studio here. But she's more than just a yoga studio owner, and she will tell more you guys about what she does. Very impressive, beautiful human being. I can't wait to have her over,
Yep.
especially
So,
her new business adventure that she started on consulting.
yeah, so next week, tune in 10:30. We'll be here Eastern Standard Time. Afterwards, we'll have it uploaded on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks much. Hope you have a great one. Enjoy.
that
Oh, I
you
have
can
it on
stay.
mouse, I think. I
Yeah.
can turn it off from here. My podcasts all end with, is this thing still on?
Is this thing still on?